Okay, so I guess the obvious place to start would be with ECL as a company. It'd be good just to understand a bit of the background, when started, why, and progress to date, if you can do that.
Yeah, ECL was established in 2020 and was established initially as a thought process on how the next generation of data center needs to look like. And how do we actually enable data centers which are compatible to the future requirements, but also compatible for the future power availability, water availability, and location availability, which is a thought process that has not been done for a long time. Our co-locations and our private data centers are actually going through a cycle which is almost 15 to 20 years long, which looks exactly the same, operate the same, function the same, with a little bit incremental improvements. So I started the process myself, and then my co-founder joined me to work on how do we actually create a solution which is first adhering to the fact that we have less energy available, less reliable energy available, restricted water use, and definitely direction to push away from using any fossil fuels. And we reached the point that we have to actually operate to be able to achieve our goals off-grid. And off-grid became my important part of what we're doing. Then we built on top of this the power generation systems, which is based on hydrogen. And the only solution today in the industry which is generating energy, which is completely clean, zero emission, and zero water, is hydrogen-based power generation. There's no other solution like that, except nuclear or hydro, which are very location specific. So if you can't be in that location, you have to actually rely on a transmission through a grid, and in 90% or 99% of the cases, the grid is dirty. Even California, which is considered a relatively clean grid, only 26% of California's grid is actually coming from renewable resources. That was the first thing. Then we looked at what is the applications which are going to be needed in the future generations of data centers. And we are seeing right now, and we were seeing for the last 18 months, and we're going to see it much, much stronger in the coming years, a very heavy requirement for AI, machine learning, and very large data sets that's being produced by the endpoint and needs to be actually processed very close to the endpoint. As a result, the density and the utilization of floor space became very, very important. We took an action on that by developing a brand new cooling system that will enable the racks to be pushed all the way to 50 to 75 kW per rack to be able to put very high density environment. And by that, enable to create a very compact footprint of a data center that can fit anywhere. If it's close to the endpoint in the middle of the cities, if it's outside of the cities in large environments where we don't want to consume a lot of space, and if it's in any integrated existing structures, so we can actually modify them. That was the second element. The third and last element, to combine all of that, the cooling system, the power generation system, and the high density data center, we are fixing a problem which is in the industry for a very long time, that's management systems. Data center management systems for a long time has been a collection of tools which not necessarily integrate to each other, not necessarily talk properly to each other, does not give you a very clean, full view of what's happening in the data center from all aspects. It is very important for us for the reason that we are generating energy on site and we're doing a lot of redundancy models inside the data center, be able to cover the whole thing with a single tool. So we developed a new tool called ECL Lightning, which is covering the full data center management system from end to end. It's completely exposed to the customer. If the customer owns the site, of course, but even if the customer is in a co-location environment, they have full visibility of what's happening, but not only visibility, also configurability. Because in sometimes the customer will come and say, you know what, I want today to optimize for cost and not necessarily sustainability. Tomorrow say, you know what, for the next quarter, sustainability is super important for me. I don't care how much it's going to cost me. Run the sustainability as the primary operational model of the site. We will do that. We integrated into that environment also a very strong machine learning AI platform that is collecting thousands of sensors from our site and take those thousands of sensors and process them to actually create a better, more efficient, more available system. The bottom line of what's our product ended up with is a 1 meg block that we can actually repeat as many times as we need to build larger sites, which is off-grid, running on hydrogen, zero emission, zero water, at extremely high level of efficiency, PUE of 1.05 or better, and with a cost base cost model, which is competitive or better than the industry today. And that was an accumulation of a lot of information. Now, how did we actually even get to it? Just a little bit of background. I came from many years at Microsoft, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Cisco, working on data centers on different scales and in different environments. Collected all that information and said, there's no way only Facebook and Microsoft and Google can actually get access to those super duper data centers. We need to give it to everybody, because there's a significant footprint of data centers which are not the hyperscalers. And they are still operating in the same methods as 15 years ago. We need to bring them to the 21st century and actually the third decade of the 21st century to be able to operate in a sustainable, reliable, and efficient way.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So if we can start maybe with the fact, I mean, it's a modular, as you say, off-grid data center, but hydrogen, green hydrogen is the sort of primary power source. So I'm interested, are you generating the hydrogen on site or are you bringing it in? And also, I mean, you say, I think zero water, zero generators, zero, for most of us, familiar with data centers that don't have any water and, generators and UPSs, like, well, how does that work? So can you, without giving away any, if you like, secrets, can you give us a bit of understanding how it all works?
So let's start with the hydrogen and hydrogen generation and delivery to the site. We decided not to generate hydrogen on site, only as a backup to our backup system. It is possible for us to do that, but it's only for specific customers on demand, that if they want us to actually back up the hydrogen supply to the site. We have agreement with 5 different suppliers in the US to deliver hydrogen to the site, which means that we guaranteed supply of hydrogen. Hydrogen can be supplied either by trucking or what's called over the fence. So, over the fence is through a pipe. It's not necessarily over the fence. It can be a very long pipe, but it's through a pipe and not through transportation. Today's market, there's a lot of hydrogen available for consumption, and the availability of hydrogen to support very large data centers, medium-sized and small data centers is there. Just a matter of actually creating the ecosystem around data centers, which we are building. We know that we are pioneering that. Now, zero water, how do we operate with no water? Like, data centers burn hundreds of millions of gallons of water for cooling. How do we actually operate with no water? We operate with no water because when we generate energy from hydrogen, the byproduct is water. So we take that water that comes as a byproduct from the power generation, run it through processes which are novel and unique to us to cool the water to the temperature that works for us into the data center, and then cycle it into a closed loop environment. In reality, we generate more water than we actually need. So as part of being a community integrated data center, we can give back to the community. We have a negative water impact. We can give back to the community water in 2 forms. One is hot water at 60 degrees C that can be used for heating pools, heating houses, heating community centers, whatever is around us. And the second one is cold water to be able to use for any other need. The water is 100% clean. It's a DI water, actually. So it can be used for anything that you want, from irrigation to standard use at the large facilities, waters into pools, and everything else that you want to actually use with that water. So that's what we do with water, compared to hundreds of millions of gallons, which are just going to waste in traditional data centers. So that's the energy supply from a fuel perspective, and the water use. Like I mentioned, we can generate hydrogen on site. When we do that with green methanol, which enables us to generate hydrogen, which is considered green hydrogen, even though it's using a methanol. The methanol is green, it's coming from a green source. As a result, it has a negative carbon footprint. And when we generate the hydrogen from that, it is considered a green hydrogen. That is a backup to our backup of our backup system. So we have 3 layers of backup systems for the energy generation. And it comes to actually address a situation where the availability of hydrogen for some reason stopped, a disaster or anything else that can happen. And then we can continue to generate the energy on site with the methanol-based environment.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you, because I think if you explain it, you've got sort of a triple sort of supply. Therefore, is that why the UPS is not required? Because there's sort of no danger. That's how you eliminate that, yeah? We
eliminated the UPS completely because we control the power generation, the power on the energy storage, and the fuel storage in a different way. We don't need the inline UPS anymore to actually hold the site for a few minutes until the diesel generators are activating. We don't have diesel generators clearly. And we are always on with our generation and storage. So from our perspective, we're bouncing between energy storage and batteries, energy generation, and our battery system and our generation system can actually coexist, operate concurrently or independently. Plus, we have 2 additional energy connections to the site. So we can bring 2 additional connections to our site in our architecture. Can be grid, can be a solar farm, can be a wind farm, can be anything else around us, to actually create a full energy ecosystem in our site, which is a four sources, large batteries, large power generation systems, an external source, grid or any other source, and an external source, which can be in most cases probably a renewable energy source, which is not reliable, so we can't get it 24/7, and sun is not out in the night, etc. But it's definitely supplemental to us and reducing our use of hydrogen when we have it available.
And in terms of, you say it's modular, you can obviously, is it, I mean, sort of infinite, well, you know, within reason infinitely, can you, or is it more you are aiming at, as you indicated earlier, you know, bringing data centers nearer to the application? Therefore, you know, I know everyone has a slightly different definition of the edge, but are we talking about in general a smaller data center facility nearer the application, or can you scale up to, you know, fairly substantial?
Yeah, so the base block that we develop is a 1 meg. And when we go to larger site, if it's a 10, 15, 25, 30 meg, it doesn't really matter. We repeat the block. We do not consolidate blocks. We were able to optimize the block both from a performance and cost to the point that we don't need to consolidate when we go to larger sites. So larger sites has just more of those 1 meg blocks, and they are scaling out as many as you want. The only limiting factor to your scale is the availability of hydrogen. How much hydrogen do you have in this area? So when you hit the numbers like 100, 150 meg, you need a substantial hydrogen supply, which you need to figure out. It's not straightforward to get a very large amount of hydrogen delivered to you or produced next to you. When we put our data centers over the fence, which is close to a generation site, we can have probably an unlimited size of data centers. When we're further out and we do delivery of hydrogen, it restricts how big the data center is going to go. But that's exactly our target market. So our target market is for customers which are building 5 to 25 meg locations in a co-location or as independent private data centers. And for those, we have no issue and no problem with actually being able to deliver as much as needed hydrogen, plus everything that we do on site.
Yeah, and clearly hydrogen is crucial to how it operates, but have you investigated, I mean, there are other, I mean, I've been reading about sort of saltwater sort of generation systems, and I think ammonia, you know, ammonia waste product from, you know, the water industry. Like, are those other things you're looking at, or is it very much, you know, hydrogen is what you're focused on and that's it, or are you looking at other, I say, alternative? You know,
so at this point, because we have a very large intake into our responsibility, we're doing a lot of things to actually change the data center completely. We decided to focus only on hydrogen, but like I said, we have 4 energy sources that can feed our site. Next generation, phase 1.5, phase 2, will definitely look at other alternatives of solutions and other sources that we can actually create. Our goal will stay the same: 0 emission, 0 water site in a modular way with high performance and high efficiency. That will always stay our goal. But generation 1.5, generation 2, generation 3 of ECL data centers will definitely follow the industry. We believe that hydrogen will be dominating this market because hydrogen is a abandoned element which has unlimited resources in the earth to get it. We really hope that we will get more and more sources of hydrogen which are being pulled directly and not going through some kind of electrolyzers. That will be amazing if that will come into fruition. And right now there's more work towards this, but we're definitely open to do other things. The things that we really, really care about in our sites is safety and community integration. Hydrogen is a very well understood material and a very, very good transportation of energy. And we know how to handle it very, very well in a safe way in the communities that we're fitting in. Other materials like ammonia, etc., are highly problematic. They could be considered extremely hazardous. So we will probably shy away from materials like that. We want to be in the community. If it's an edge location or a mid-size to large location within the living area, if it's an industrial area or residential area. And for that, we have to actually stay with the technology, which we believe is the safe and the right one. And we see that actually emerging right now in those markets with automotive and other uses of hydrogen in this environment. So I think in the short 2 to 3 years, next 2 to 3 years, we'll focus on hydrogen.
Okay, and in terms of the, I mean, I know it's fairly early days, but in terms of customer reaction or potential, have you been met with everything from sort of astonishment to skepticism? Do you have to spend quite a lot of time telling people it's as good as you're explaining it, or is it easy? Everyone goes, "Oh yeah, I get it. This is fantastic." What sort of reaction have you been having?
Yeah, so all of the above. So we're interacting with about 25 different customers right now. It started from terms like this is science fiction to how do you actually do this and what's the issues with it and how do we make sure this is actually reliable, is connected to the grid, etc. We're addressing all of those aspects. Our reliability in our data centers is higher than the reliability of the grid because of the way we designed it with a very high level of redundancy. The science fiction comment is we're building it right now over here. In 4 weeks, the site is going to be up and running. So you'll be able to come and see that science fiction just became science, not science fiction. And a lot of customers which come to visit us, we're in the early stage where the site is not up and running yet, but we can show how it's going to look like, and portions of it are already up and running. People just feel that we created a new category of data centers. We created a category of data centers which is possible to be replicated everywhere, possible to be competitive in this market, and definitely addressing our needs of the future and the future of our kids. We want to continue to build data centers. Data centers cannot stop being built because, especially what we see right now, which is happening in the tremendous level of processing power that is being required for what's emerging right now. So the next generation will not be able to give up on data centers. Might as well prepare for them data centers that can actually sustain for decades and centuries, and not have to worry about the fact that those data centers are going to have a damage to the environment around them.
And in terms of, I believe I think you revealed you've had a $7 million seed funding not so long ago. So in terms of the rollout, again, you obviously don't share any sort of marketing secrets, but what is the plan to roll? Obviously you're going to have the demo, people come and see. Are you going to just start in the US and then roll out, or are you going to hit Europe and Asia? What's your ideal plan roadmap, if you like?
Yeah, so the seed investment, we took the seed investment after we completed the design, because we just described some of our customers that we engage in really early stage told us, hey, you have to show us that this thing is working. We can't take your word for it. So we took the seed money to actually partially fund the site that we're building right now in Mountain View, California. Our first milestone is to have the site production level up and running and running different workloads. And that's going to be by the end of Q2. At that point, we are already engaged with customers. We're actually engaging customers globally, not just in the US. And the US has an advantage right now because hydrogen economy is actually advancing faster in the US than in the rest of the world. The rest of the world is right now trailing behind it. Europe, for example, price of hydrogen is still very high. And with very high price of hydrogen, it is very difficult to actually create energy at a competitive price, even though the price of energy in Europe went to the 50 to 60 to 70 cents per kilowatt hour. But if the hydrogen is sold for $25 per kilogram, it is not possible to compete. Hydrogen needs to be in a range of, in the short run, about $4 to $7 per kilogram. In the long run, it needs to go down to the level of $1 per kilogram. I can tell you that when we generate hydrogen on site, we generate it under $2.50 per kilogram. So that will create for us a very, very competitive environment for the grid. If the grid is sold at 60 cents per kilowatt hour and we can generate energy at 20, we just cut the cost of the energy for running the data center by 60%, which is incredible for a lot of customers, because this is translated immediately into reduced TCO. And in a lot of places in the world right now, we get to the point that we can be competitive. The crossing point between the price of hydrogen and the price of energy happened already this year. So we are in a place that generating clean energy with hydrogen based on fuel cells, which is what we're doing, can compete with the price of grid power. And that is a very important milestone for the whole industry, because for a long time, people thought there's going to be a tremendous premium to be able to run on green energy. It's not the case anymore. So we crossed that line, not everywhere, but we crossed the line in a significant number of locations that we can actually be competitive.
And also, I mean, in terms of, there's clearly a substantial existing data center, infrastructure across what. Is what you're doing possible? Can you retrofit, if you like? Can you convert a legacy data center using your technology, or is it only applicable to greenfield sites, people building new and can use it? How does that work?
We absolutely can retrofit, not necessarily data center. We can retrofit actually different structures, all the malls, all the buildings that have been done for offices and not used anymore. A lot of savings on constructions for existing sites that does not need to be demolished to build data centers on them. In our site over here in Mountain View, we demonstrate that. We took an office space which had in its back a 1,200 square feet warehouse, and we converted that warehouse into probably the most cutting edge data center in the world today. And that was a pure zero construction, right? So the site is up and running. We just connected everything together. All of our innovation was moved in. The installation of the hydrogen generation and cooling system is in our parking lot. And we're proving to the possibility of converting any structure on a brownfield. In a greenfield, we definitely have a much more higher level of flexibility. But one interesting thing that we do on a greenfield is, because our blocks are really small in the construction, we use sustainable construction, which means we use 3D printing of concrete instead of using traditional construction. 3D printing right now is wasteless and the most sustainable solution in the industry for building structures. And you can build large structures with 3D printing, but because we are a block at a time, we can use that technology, and that technology gives us a tremendous advantage in cost and in time to delivery.
One other thing occurs to me, that a lot of vendors in the data center space, the people that supply the UPSs and the cooling systems, might look at what you're doing and be a little bit, nervous. I mean, I know your intention will be to do it, but somebody might say, "Oh, we'll snap them up and then kick the technology into the long grass so that we can carry on selling, all our UPS and stuff like that." So, how do you see that landscape? How have you been received? I guess by the competition.
I think we are in a place that we made a decision to actually create a new data center category. We will not be picked up by somebody, because we will not accept a pickup at this point. We want to be in a place that we can actually prove that we can build this at scale in a lot of places. Will the suppliers of UPS systems and and the other sub-components which are being used right now be concerned, I think they are already making a transition into a place that they have a greener solution. I think what we will do is we'll give them a boost to actually think about their portfolio and think about what they actually want to do if they want to fit into this green data center arena. And a lot of them are doing it already. So I think on one side, we are giving them a push to actually push into a higher level of sustainability, etc. On the other side, they are partners to us. So we are partnering with them. Like, we're buying battery for storage. We're not generating batteries for storage. We're buying it from a supplier. So if you used your battery to build UPSs, you can transition very easily to build an inline parallel connection for battery systems. If you were using diesel generators, you need to think about actually stopping doing this and start doing hydrogen-based generators. So that's for the whole community that needs to happen. So I personally believe that we will stand strong and build multiple sites at multiple megawatts, a lot of megawatts, because the world is needed, and the world is actually looking for us to do this. We know that it's a startup and as a new emerging technology, there are risks with it, but we are willing to take the risks, and we are fortunate to have investors that believe in what we're doing, and we are fortunate to have customers which really wants us to be successful. So I believe that it will be very difficult right now to stop that train, especially that we are weeks away from proving that it is possible in 2023 to build a fully green data center, which is a high performance, not a low level data centers. High performance data centers fully green is possible in 2023. The industry for a long time was telling us 2035, 2050, a lot of dates which are out there so far away that we don't need to do anything about it. We're saying no. 2023 is the year that the fully green data center with zero emission and zero water will be up and running and active.
Okay, I mean, I think that's covered most of the questions, and I'm fascinated and excited by what you've told me. So, Yuval, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I would just want to keep an open invitation for you to come visit us and see the site.
No, I'm almost certainly will do that. I'm intrigued, as I'm sure most people watching this will be. So thanks again.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Phil.